Today on An Imperfect Leader, our guest is Dr. Lupita Hightower. Now, Dr. Hightower received Arizona Superintendent of the Year for 2023, and she has worked in education for more than 28 years in various roles, including superintendent for the last 14. As an immigrant from Mexico starting school in the U.S. in the seventh grade, she credits her success to the many believers, including family and educators. Lupita, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you so much, Peter. So happy to be here with you.
I'm so thrilled to spend some time with you. Over the years, leaders throughout AASA would say to me, you really should talk to Lupita. And I would feel pretty uncomfortable about like cold calling you and being like, hey, Sherry Cami said that I should talk to you. So it just felt really odd. But you and I did get to meet last year in Arizona at the Arizona School Administrators Conference. And I felt just so privileged to the fact that you joined our breakout session. That was a real highlight around human-centered leadership. So I read in a description of your work, and it's really about your legacy. I read this, that Lupita's greatest accomplishment is bringing more learning opportunities for students, especially in cases where they would otherwise not have them. And this really speaks to a si se puede rallying cry that I heard you describe in School CEO. So I wonder if we could start there. Would you tell us about these kinds of opportunities that you're just so proud of, and then why that's important to you?
Absolutely. I would have never dreamt, Peter, that in my life I would be a school superintendent when my dream was to be a classroom teacher. So some of those opportunities are creating a cultural framework with a great team. So in my last 28 years and 17 at Tolleson Elementary School District and 14 as school superintendent, it was creating a cultural framework that everyone that worked in our school district believed in all kids without exception. So I think that cultural framework is the basis of everything and the work that the 400 employees did in that school district, led by a fabulous governing board. And for me as the superintendent. So believing, connecting, teaching kids to time travel. Now, within that cultural framework and the mission, the vision, and the goals, partnering with folks who would support the mission, the vision, and the goals, and the families and the community to support the funding that it would take to bring those opportunities for students. So, as an example, having the community approve bonds, maintenance and operations override, or capital overrides. So, those referendums would bring a lot of opportunities for students. Full day kindergarten. Arizona doesn't fund full day K. They don't recognize it as a grade. That was one. Having counselors at each school site and later writing a grant so we could have two school counselors at each school site and a social worker. Having all the additional classes that really make the education of students whole and great. So art classes, computer science classes, band. We had an award-winning mariachi band, award-winning marching band program in elementary school since the district is K-8. Physical education. And
Wow, this is amazing. All these opportunities. I mean, and for those who are watching and those listening, like you're not even reading off a list. You're just sort of recalling all these opportunities that still remain in the forefront of your mind. So a couple of things come to mind. One, so when I got married in Oakland, California, I'm Jewish, my wife is Chinese, and we couldn't figure out what would be the best sort of music for our wedding. We just had in a community park. So a mariachi band became like that seemed logical to us. So it was like the best wedding ever. So like the most alive music. One of the things I was thinking about though, as you were talking about a cultural framework, it made me think of Margaret Wheatley's work around a cultural field, right? This you exist in this field that when it's disrupted, you feel it, but otherwise you're just sort of in it. And it really sounds like you've created this, yes, I'm entitled to these opportunities, whether that be band, whether that be the support of social workers, whether that be the support of counselors in school, whether that be a full day kindergarten. I also you use the term time travel. And I recently heard a conversation about this idea for superintendents that what if you put a chair in any room where you're making decisions and that should be called the generational or ancestral chair, thinking, what will future generations think of this decision we're making? Or what will our past generations be considering? What would they be thinking as we're making this decision? That we sit in this place and time that have everything to do with where we came from and everything to do with where we're going. And so all these things are sort of swirling in my mind as you were describing. And so I guess this cultural framework. I wonder, can you talk a little bit more about that? Would that be all right?
Yes, absolutely. And it is so interesting that you mentioned the past and the future. Tolleson Elementary was one of three districts that desegregated before Brown versus Board of Topeka. So there's a legacy of courage there, Peter. So with that, we have this huge responsibility. So this cultural framework is based on the Kids at Hope belief system, believing that every single child and youth are capable of success, no exceptions. And no exceptions meant no exceptions. So it's having staff members that believe in kids without exception. And we call those adults treasure hunters. And we call the students treasures. So that was huge. Connecting, making sure that we know that the families are always that ace of hearts for the students, but we wanted students to also have caring adults in the school system. Those we called ace of clubs. But we wanted them to know that the expectations would be very, very high. So the ace of diamonds, and then the other ace would be opportunities to succeed. So with that, we only had two, one long-term suspension and one expulsion in 14 years.
Well,
So
I mean, every deck of cards has two jokers, so you have to have at least two jokers.
So it was a lot of strategic work on behalf of students to do whatever it took to continue providing those opportunities and holding high expectations for them to succeed.
If you're just joining us, my guest today is Dr. Lupita Ley Hightower, the 2023 Arizona Superintendent of the Year and the recently awarded 2024 Voice for Equity Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. That is so exciting. Just happened. So that must have been pretty wonderful.
Thank you so much. Humbling for sure, especially in the lifetime category. It's like, well, wait, what? How?
I know.
How?
It's still it's exciting at any age to be recognized for the work that we've done. In my introduction, I didn't mention that you've recently retired from the superintendency of the Tolleson Elementary School District. I read your beautiful letter to the community, and it listed so many of your team's accomplishments. Now, if I read it correctly, the incoming superintendent was your assistant superintendent, who you supported and the board unanimously approved. And it makes me think of a conversation I had in year one of the superintendency with Trisha Kosanda. She's a superintendent just outside of Chicago. And I wonder, would you talk about that importance of succession planning for any school leader, particularly in your situation?
Absolutely, it is critical. If you want to continue that cultural framework and the successes to be built upon, it takes time. And working with Ms. Giselle Herrera, an outstanding leader, she's the new superintendent for the last 17 years, Peter. And the governing board knew that the time would come where I would be retiring. So they had asked me to have a succession plan, and they were very supportive of a superintendent leadership academy training, not only for Giselle, the new superintendent, but for many other leaders. And then also an executive leadership training program that they invested in. And then a couple of years ago, she had been the executive director of curriculum and instruction. They supported a promotion as an assistant superintendent so we could work closely together for the last couple of years to be able to recommend it to the governing board, and the governing board unanimously selecting her.
I think about the fact that whether it's language acquisition, whether it's around adopting programs and curriculum, whether it's leadership, that how important, it takes 5 to 7 years in each of these pieces, right? And I think to myself, so often school districts are forced to, they just radically change who's in charge, kind of thing. And that has such an impact on leaders, your principals, your teachers, and then ultimately your children. There was recently a study that came out about the impact of changing superintendents. And I wonder for future research what it might look like when there is clear succession planning and how powerful that can be to continue to do good things and still leverage the new ideas and the new energy of the superintendent, just not losing focus on what was I guess a very intentional alignment by the previous superintendent. So anyway, not a lot of school districts do this, so it caught my eye, and I was just like super impressed and to some degree jealous.
Thank you, Peter. It has been such a wonderful transition, and ultimately the best for kids. And Giselle is already elevating some of the work that was started because we worked together for so many years.
Right.
The families, the students were excited. I would hear comments like, Dr. Hightower, I can't believe you're retiring. And then in the same sentence, the students would say, but Miss Herrera is going to be here. What,
Right?
what meant a lot to
Exactly. So
them.
you think about like we're treasure hunters and there are treasures. They know that they're not going to be buried somewhere else, and left to wait for a treasure hunter to find them. They know that there's already someone there for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really special. I'd like to ask you a question that I ask every guest who comes on our program. How does the term an imperfect leader resonate with you?
It resonates a lot. I decided to go into administration many years ago thinking I'm just an ordinary person, but how can I make a bigger difference? So, knowing that I was just an ordinary human, how could I make positive decisions that will impact students? But knowing that at the end of the day, we are just that human. So, being an imperfect leader and having the humility to recognize it definitely resonates with me.
We're back for segment two of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. And my guest today is Dr. Lupita Ley Hightower. Now, in this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision that they made and then we discuss it. So, Lupita, what happened?
So, when you're a school superintendent, Peter, you make a lot of decisions, and most of the time, it is highly recommended that you use a change process protocol when you're making decisions. Sometimes you make decisions that are top down. Sometimes you make decisions where you are involving the stakeholders, where you are communicating, where you are dispelling the myths, and that's preferable. But there was a situation that seemed so simple that I thought, I don't need to implement a change process protocol. I went to our food service director and I asked her, what do you think about implementing in each school cafeteria infused water? And she said, I love the idea. I'm like, yeah, like our students deserve to be treated like they're in a resort, right? Like, so in addition of having the multiple entries, the salad bar, we should have infused water in each school cafeteria. And she said, I agree. And I asked her, when do you think you can get it started? It was Friday. And she said, Monday. And she did, and she did an outstanding job with it. But there were a lot of challenges that happened with the infused water.
Okay, so we'll stop there because my next question, as you know, is going to be so what got overlooked? If I could just sort of reflect on, I can remember if we're talking food service, similar with the nutrition guidelines that we thought, oh, we don't need fried chicken, the chicken tenders, we'll be fine with those sort of like naked tenders. Like they didn't have like kind of breading. And the revolt from children was we were back with regular chicken tenders pretty soon after that and tried to find a different way to manage their needs. So my face went, because what seemed like a fairly like, just non-offensive sort of addition or change really can have an impact. And what a great lesson for all of us. Okay, so what got overlooked?
So many things, right? So there was no communication, there was no involvement of the stakeholders, especially the closest to the solution, cafeteria workers. So they did it. So they ended up, cutting the fruit, getting the water, having the big, beautiful containers. But then the students, there was no process of how they would get up to get the water. So then there were these long lines. Then they were asking for sugar to put in the infused water. The cafeteria workers were sharing that it was taking too much time from their schedule. And it was just like the students were spilling. So now they need extra personnel to be mopping the floor where they're spilling that infused water. But it was such a simple thing that we ended up saying, like, I went back to my team. I was like, gosh, you would have thought that I'm asking you to feed scorpions to the students. I just asked for infused water. Like, that's so simple. But we would laugh and we would joke about it, that even if it's something as simple as infused water, you need a change process protocol and you need to involve the stakeholders.
Yeah.
Right. So
Absolutely. I'm thinking so the Water Center for Systems Thinking has a set of these habits of systems thinking cards that I just love. And one of them is the that systems leaders avoid the impulse to make a quick decision. It's like, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if we had infused water? Like, our kids deserve that. When can they be done? Monday? Fantastic. Let's do it." As opposed to like pausing, thinking like, "What are the unintended consequences of this decision? How might that impact the nutrition services workers who now have to cut and dice fresh fruit to put into the water? How about the spills, the long lines of kids, the sort of, and kids are kids, so they start pushing in line, or hey, they're butting or cutting, depending on where you live in the country, they call it different things. But like all of that. Oh my. So what did you learn about relationships?
It was such a huge learning to say that even if it's something as simple as infused water, we must involve the stakeholders. We must bring them together. We must talk about it. We must communicate the change. We must dispel any rumors and come up with solutions. They ended up working it out, Peter, but we could have avoided many of these challenges in this process.
Yeah, thinking about when you make decisions to make them with the people most impacted. For you, yeah, you get to say, we have infused water for. So you're in the balcony, and then you get to see sort of the dance floor, and it's like you didn't even teach the people the dance steps. They're all tripping all over each other. Like, oh, it would have been nice if we had taught the choreography.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So it was early in my career, thankfully. So we used that as a joke as we were thinking of any initiative or change. And they still have infused water in the school cafeterias. And
Oh,
it's
they do. That's amazing. I was going to ask, I'll get to that at the end, but I could imagine at board meetings when you're presenting an idea and you say, look, this is not infused water. Let me
right.
just, right?
Right.
People say,
Right.
remember that? Oh my God.
Yes, most
Yeah.
definitely.
What frustrated you? There must have been a moment of frustration, no?
Well, it was like, come on, guys, this is easy. Like, it's just infused water. Like, you can do it. So that's feeding the kids scorpions. It's infused water. But I got it and I understood it and I smiled and said, yes, we must engage as many people as possible and in order for the change to be successful.
So when you talk about the change process protocol, my question typically next is, what could you have done differently? So, what got overlooked can sometimes be at a system level. We have some ownership in decision making. And so I'm curious if you wouldn't mind maybe just digging a little bit into the change process protocols that you have come to use, and in using this as a situation to talk about it. What could you have done differently?
We have such an outstanding team and such an outstanding leader of food services that leader of food services could have gone back to her team, brought up the idea, came up on what would be the best way to implement it. Then they could have brought the idea back, presented to our school leaders that are in the trenches, and then our school principals could have brought the communication to their staff. I could have sent communication to all staff, letting them know a timeline of when that would be implemented and what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't have infused water, so it wasn't as if like there was a fire that needed to be put out that you needed it on Monday. But there was
Right.
an excitement, right? And so I think about the description of your change process that you just said is so similar to what I learned at AASA through the National Superintendent Certification. This sort of look, listen, learn, and lead. Right? Look is like, I'm thinking about infused water in our, for water because our kids deserve it, just like a spa. Wouldn't that be great to elevate how we say to them, you really are our treasures? And so then people say, okay, so now we're going to listen to you talk about the reasons why and what you think will be the process. And then learn is, now we're going to ask you lots of questions, not evaluative, really just to try to understand, what will this decision look like a year from now? The cost of buying fruit, is that going to go up? What will this look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And then the lead is, okay, so who else needs to be in this conversation? How will we communicate this out to people? Have we included the people most impacted? And so look, listen, learn, lead is so aligned to the work that you just described in terms of that change process.
Thank you. And thank you for articulating it that way as well.
I was hearing you say it, each sort of stage of that process was just sort of like beaming because you communicated it so beautifully. For me, I'm the sort of the thinker that needs to put it into little boxes, sort of a protocol. So thank you for letting me do that. In the end, what was something that was good that came out of this experience?
Everyone knows that our district has an award-winning food service program. And by everyone, it's, of course, the students, the teachers, the staff, the families, the community, and they love it. The teachers, every morning, they go and fill up their water bottles with infused water. The families, when they come in with their children, they know that it's available. They're blown away if they're new to our district. So, yes.
I love it. I imagine, as you had also indicated, that it has become a vehicle for talking about change in other ways. That
Yes.
is as a reminder of when we do move quickly,
Yes.
we miss opportunities.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
What advice would you give to an aspiring leader?
I would say for them to continue to do great work in the roles that they're in their seats, and also to get involved and engaged in different organizations. The networking piece is key. You learn a lot from each other, and invariably, there's always a lot of support when you're doing that. I got involved. I never got involved thinking that I would get something from it, but invariably you build relationships and you get to know people that are very supportive of the work, the mission, vision, and goals of what you're trying to do, and are supportive of the school system.
I was thinking specifically if more than 80% of teachers are women and then only a little over 20% are superintendents, that organizations like Voice for Equity are essential for women in leadership to know that they have a network of support and a safe place to be vulnerable and to learn to lead even better.
Yes, it is.
Our guest today was Dr. Lupita Ley Hightower, the recently retired superintendent of the Tolleson Elementary School District, the 2023 Arizona Superintendent of the Year, the 2024 Voice for Equity Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. And Lupita, I have to say, I'm just so grateful for your time. I worked for a principal who talked about children being stars and that we were star polishers. Think it goes even deeper to refer to children as treasures and that we are treasure hunters because we get to then really guard something so precious, but then also share it with the world. So thank you so much for your time today and for your treasure. Thank you so much for what you've done for education and what you continue to do.